Many of you had doubters that never thought you would make it, and many of you had people that you thought were close to you, and yet they showed themselves not to be that way. They showed themselves to be somebody that was actually against you the whole time. And you know, the funny thing about God is, and the greatest thing about God is, that if you put your heart and soul into something, into anything at all, if you are truly dedicated and committed, He will reward you. And really, that's just the way of the universe too, right? Whenever we are contributing to some kind of effort, some kind of value or principle in the long term, that's what happens. What happens is you eventually get to a point in which you're so committed that nothing could ever take you off your square, and God will reward you with abundance on whatever it is that you are doing. And that's really what I want to talk about in today's video, is how to stay in that abundance mentality and God giving you abundance. But the way that you are getting to that point, the way that many of you are understanding this, the people that are on my channel understand this full-heartedly, but there are some people that are just visitors that they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get it, and that's okay. But I'm going to be talking to the people that want to understand this. It's that God really doesn't want you broke, and He doesn't want you lazy either. If God wanted you lazy and broke, why would He have rewarded Job, who was tested by the devil? Anybody that knows the story of Job knows that Satan was basically betting with God to whether or not Job would actually curse God. And Job was God's most dedicated servant, and Job would never do that, God thought. God thought, no, he's too loyal, basically. And so Satan and God made a bet, which you might think is a bit strange, and it is a bit strange. It is a bit strange to make a bet with the devil, right? But that's what happened. That's what happened. And history goes to show, and through what happened, is that when you are never taken off your square, you are somebody that is contributing to the highest possible good in your life, and you're contributing to your own well-being in any way, shape, and form, you will get rewarded by God. It may not always seem like it. It may not always seem like you're going to be that kind of person. It may not always seem like God's on your side, because what happened to Job? Job lost pretty much everything. He lost so much about his life, and he lost really his whole family turned against him in many ways, right? His whole family did. And how did his family turn against him? Well, they encouraged him to curse God. They encouraged him to do these things that were against his own values. And this also went to show that the devil got to his whole family except for him. And the bet was made between God and Satan that he could do anything, Satan could do anything that he wanted to Job. He just couldn't kill him. Satan was said, okay, well, my pleasure, man, my pleasure. And because we all know the devil works in iniquity, and he loves to sow discord, and he wants to make sin look normal. That's what the devil wants. The devil wants sin to be looked at as a normality, and righteousness and virtue and integrity to be looked at as a weird phenomenon, right? This is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And so we have to understand, and we have to move in accordance to that way. But, well, what happened to Job, right? His riches were doubled, or even let's just say this. He increased way more after his trial, and the bet was over between Satan and God. Job got way more of everything. His riches improved, his family improved, his whole well-being improved, his livelihood improved. So all of these things that happened to him were, in a way, setting himself up for something even better. And so you have to have the thought algorithm that God is opening bigger and better things for you, whether you can agree with that or whether you don't agree with that. It is the case. And if you don't believe it, then that's your own doing. That's your own fault. Because God does want this for you. God doesn't want you broke. Are you kidding me? In this world, God doesn't want you broke, but you have to show God that you're willing to earn it. And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest part, right? Is actually showing God how to earn it. And you're going to have a lot of deceivers along the way. Satan will put intentionally deceivers and business people, business opportunities. He will put people to lust after. He will put all of these things in your way so that you can waste your most valuable asset, which is time. Time is something that we can never get back. This is something that I've talked a lot about recently with people in my consultations. It's that they'll be going through stuff and they'll start saying certain things about how things are going, and it's like, okay, well, you can always get more of that, right? Like, you can get more of that, you can get more of this. Well, what can you not always get more of? And the answer is time. You cannot get more time. If you cannot get more time, then what exactly is your most valuable resource? It is time. There's no time to waste anymore, guys. There's no time. And I knew this from a while ago, but I never really embodied it because I was actually too afraid of the truth. I was too afraid that the reality was that we really don't have a lot of time on this earth. And I was afraid of the reason in that conclusion. And as I look around, I'm at this park today, walking around, and it's a beautiful day. We had a big thunderstorm last night. And it's just getting back to the small things, right? Getting back to nature and remembering and reminding myself, even just going for a walk in the park can really be clearing up for the mind and the body and the soul. And ultimately, it will heal your soul. And even though we can't rush our healing, if you're going through that sort of thing, it is entirely possible that you can do all that you can in your power to make each moment just getting better all the time. The Beatles have that song called Getting Better, and they go something like, it's getting better all the time. And then John Lennon says, because it can't get much worse. And I always thought that was a very clever line. Because sometimes if you get to your lowest point, let's say, like Job at his lowest points was ill. His whole family turned against him. He lost everything as far as what he built. Like, things were just not looking good, and yet he still had faith that God was good. It takes a lot of faith in that kind of situation, don't you think? And what happened? He couldn't rush anything, but he just kept the faith. And I want to talk about what exactly does that mean? What exactly does it mean to keep the faith through the precipitous moments that we all face, through the categories of life in which there are excessive trials, through the power of evil? How can we overcome this with faith? Well, in the Bible, it also says to have faith over fear, right? Anything that causes fear in you is really challenging your faith. And when your faith is being challenged, what you have to accept is that it is being challenged. But sometimes it's not necessarily the faith in God which is being challenged all the time. Faith can come in many different forms and frames. But ultimately, if you are being challenged in your faith, what that really means at a soul level is that something about your reality is being disintegrated, and you're perceiving something to be something more or something less than what it was. And you're lacking control in some way of these circumstances. If your finances are hit and miss, like let's say stuff happened at your job recently, or your job, things are just, I mean, anybody that's got a day job understands, and that actually is one of God's people understands that it's just not the place for God's people. A day job is not the place for God's people. It's so annoying to have to be a part of that world sometimes, but sometimes you have to actually be a part of the world in order to get beyond and to be beyond it, really. Sometimes it takes a meditative mind in order to just feel your way through that kind of stuff. And that's okay. But if you can still find blissful moments in those times when you are most annoyed, when you are most challenged, like Job, you're going to be rewarded. And God doesn't want you to lack faith for that. God wants you to rise to the challenge, but he's not necessarily going to make it easy for you. He's not going to make it easy. He's just not. But that's part of living this life and walking this way. So I hope this message was useful and insightful. And until next time, peace be with you.